next step in the traditional proof would then be recovery of the viruses from the monkeys with malignant disease.
The same symptoms displayed by a human victim, except that with a human, the entire face turns gray.
Tubes are inserted down the throat into the lungs and connected to pressure transducers and other instrumentation.
But these experiments do not tell the whole story and only suggest how pesticides might affect man. How much poison is stored up in the body and how much excreted, and the effects of pesticides on the vital organs. These poisons are slow in taking effect, but may remain active and potentially dangerous for many days or weeks.
The following experiment is conducted on lungs taken from an animal. The isolated heart beats just as it did a few hours previously. An animal's head can also live in the isolated condition. The dog is dead.
Hello, I'm Suncat, and today we're going to talk about something really important: animal testing. We're going to peel back all the layers, explore where this whole practice came from, what it actually is and how it's really done, and most importantly, what we can do to finally put a stop to it. Yes, every single year, more than 200 million animals are used and killed in labs. Okay, so before anything else, let's really define what animal testing even means, because it's probably not what you expect. Those cute photos you might have seen of rabbits in makeup or puppies in little lab coats, that's a total myth, only designed to make you feel okay. The truth? Well, it's way more disturbing. The Cruelty-free International Organization gives us a great definition. Animal testing is any scientific experiment or test in which a live animal is forced to undergo something likely to cause pain, suffering, distress, or lasting harm. Because here's the fundamental truth that we sometimes forget. We need to remember, animals feel pain, just like you, just like me. They're all sentient beings. They feel fear, they feel joy, they feel loneliness. And let's not forget, we humans are animals too, right? So now that we've got a clearer picture of what animal testing is, let's take a quick trip back in time to see where this whole thing started. For thousands of years, humans have been super curious about the world. We've been observing, interacting with animals for over 17,000 years. At first, animals were seen purely as resources for food, clothing, and tools. And that mindset, unfortunately, led people to start using them for scientific research. Back in ancient Greece, 500 BC, they were already practicing something called vivisection. That's literally dissecting living animals. These experiments were all about trying to understand medicine and biology. And back then, most people genuinely believed animals didn't have feelings or consciousness. But what about their suffering, cares for them? There was no reason not to exploit them or kill them. But not everyone bought into that. Philosophers like Pythagoras, Plato, and Plutarch, even Seneca, who was a vegetarian by the way, they all spoke out against vivisection. Unfortunately, those compassionate voices were pretty rare. So for those who think that being vegetarian or vegan is a trend from the 21st century, let me tell you that you're wrong. Let's move on to the 16th century. You get guys like René Descartes, a famous philosopher who pretty much said, Animals were just machines, like complicated clocks, and incapable of feeling pain. He completely ignored some obvious signs. I don't know, like animals crying, screaming, trying to escape in fear. I don't know. I mean, any reasonable person would see that as distress, but he just didn't. Or maybe he just didn't care. Things started to shift slowly. In the 18th century, philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, Schopenhauer started publicly criticizing animal cruelty. And here's something we seriously don't hear enough about: women. Even though they were so often historically invisibilized, women were at the forefront of this activism against vivisection. For example, Marie Huot in 19th century France founded the Popular League Against Vivisection Abuses. But there is also Anna Kingsford, Jacqueline Lalouette, and the list goes on and on. As you can see, there were so many incredible women who have fought against animal cruelty, and we really need to remember the fight and put a spotlight on women in history. Then, in the 1800s and early 1900s, something else happened. People started having domestic pets. They started getting closer to animals, getting to know them, and suddenly, when you have a beloved dog or cat, seeing another animal suffer hits you differently. Isn't it crazy? That connection really fueled this anti-vivisection movement. And in 1875, the Society for the Protection of Animals Liable to Vivisection was founded in the UK. People finally started seeing some animals as companions, not just tools. I guess having a pet really does make you more empathetic. Of course, opponents of animal testing faced massive resistance. People would argue, but you know, it's necessary to save human lives. But seriously, does any potential benefits for us humans justify the immense, unimaginable pain we inflict on animals? No, even Queen Victoria got involved. She actually helped push through the Cruelty to Animal Act in 1876, and it was the first law regulating the use of live animals in scientific research in the world. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, anti-vivisection groups were popping up all over the world. You have the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, ASPCA, and it was founded in 1866, and the National Anti-Vivisection Society in the UK followed in 1875. These groups worked tirelessly to raise awareness, but it wasn't until Peter Singer's Animal Liberation in 1975 that the issue really exploded into the foreground in the eyes of the world. And then Tom Regan's The Case for Animals' Rights in 1983 deepened that ethical discussion even further. Animal testing isn't just confined to medicine. Oh no, since the 1940s, scientists have been throwing animals into military and space programs. The US sent monkeys like Albert II or Yorick into space. But even more famous, you have Laika, the first dog in space in 1957, kidnapped when she was only 2 or 3 years old. Or in France, you have Félicette, a cute little French stray cat from Paris.
Docteur, à quelle expérience vous livrez-vous maintenant sur cette petite chatte?
Actuellement, nous examinons l'activité électrique spontanée du cerveau du chat sous la forme de son électroencéphalogramme.
Pourquoi vous voulez voir si c'est un chat intelligent ou quoi?
Nous voulons, ce n'est pas exactement son intelligence que nous regardons, mais son activité électrique, surtout dans un but plus lointain, un but de comparaison avec les modifications éventuelles qui pourraient se poser lors du vol en fusée.
Mais en somme, c'est ça le fond de votre expérience, c'est d'arriver à savoir si l'apesanteur, par exemple, a une action sur la transmission des ondes électriques dans le cerveau?
Exactement.
c'est le tir d'une fusée Véronique emportant une petite chatte nommée Félicette. La pointe signale d'elle-même son point d'atterrissage. Bonjour Félicette, bon voyage?
Do you know what all these animals have in common? They were all exploited and died for human research. For example, they died from overheating and panic in space. Some managed to stay alive during the space mission, but they were killed by humans for brain study. Did you ever question the ethics behind that progress? These animals didn't sign up for this. They didn't volunteer. They were used, they suffered, and then they were killed. And we, humans, build statues and call them heroes? That's not gratitude. That's just pure hypocrisy. These animals weren't heroes. They were victims. They didn't choose sacrifice. They were denied their life, their autonomy, and their very dignity. Personally, I don't want to say thank you to these animals. All I want to say is I'm sorry. I am truly sorry. Honestly, I could do an entire video just on the animal used and killed in space projects. It's sickening.
In this laboratory at the NASA Ames Research Center, scientists were given the task of finding out what atmospheric conditions were best for astronauts on long-duration space voyages. Small laboratory animals were housed in glass chambers and studied at varying oxygen pressures. During one such series of tests, in which rats were kept in 100% oxygen at sea level pressure for over 3 weeks, an unusual condition developed. The animals exhibited pathological symptoms in the lungs that closely resembles a disease which affects humans, known as pulmonary emphysema.
Thousands, or maybe hundreds of thousands of animals have been used and killed for space research. And who even remembers the names? Who asks for their forgiveness? Nobody. What about military programs? Well, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of animals were used and killed over the last century with horrible practices such as the live tissue training, which is shooting, burning, and amputating pigs and goats to train medics. If this just horrifies you, and I really hope it does, I deeply encourage you to explore PETA's timeline called Without Consent. It meticulously documents over a century of these animal testing atrocities. I know it's a lot to take in, but it's important. I'll put the link in the description for you. So yes, animal testing is absolutely still happening. But we have to ask ourselves, at what true cost? And is it truly necessary when we have viable alternatives? Let's find out. The short answer, no. It is not nearly as useful and as vital as many claim.
When we have alternatives available that are cost-effective, time-effective, human-relevant, why not to adopt those? And you know that using these human relevant testing methods, they are more reliable because they are human relevant. There is no species difference.
We have a paradigm that animal testing is reliable and necessary to guarantee human safety and successful development of drugs. Nowadays, we have so many alternatives. You need to change this paradigm in the heads of the people, in the heads of lay people, but also in the heads of decision makers, of scientists, all these people that are involved in this whole system. Animal testing and animal experiments are a system. You have two important parts that need to be tackled differently. There is on the one side the fundamental research, which is biomedical research mainly at universities, which is more explorative. There you have a lot of freedom of research, so you can more or less decide yourself if, as a researcher, you want to conduct animal experiments or if you want to use another model. But then when it comes to the second part, which is the regulatory sector, this is safety testing. Experiments like, for example, safety of chemicals, or drug development. A pharma company, when they want to bring a drug to the market, they need to test efficacy and safety of these drugs. When you want to save money and have effective research tools, there is no pros. The only pros that you have is if you are maybe one of the lobbyists whose career depends on animal testing, then it has pros. That's the problem that I just said for these people. It does not have scientific pros and no economic pros, which is also a strong driving force. So all this pharma sector, for example, and big companies, they are pushing also politically, also on stakeholder level, pushing a lot towards animal-free testing, not for the same reason as I'm pushing, or maybe yes, because they are pushing it also because of economic reasons. It is cheaper because it's better science.
Listen to these numbers. Every single year, global estimates point to over 200 million animals used in laboratory experiments worldwide. That's nearly the entire population of Brazil. The actual scale of suffering is even more terrifying. 192 million of those animals were estimated to be mice alone, making them by far the most used animal in labs in the world. But here's the absolute kicker, the messed up loophole. Remember what I said earlier about the AWA? It only protects certain animals, like dogs and monkeys. And let's be real, protect is a huge euphemism because these animals are still subjected to cruel treatment. And that's not all. Mice and rats, who make up over 90% of all animals used in experiments, aren't even classified as animals under these lab regulations. In 1959, William Russell and Rex Birch introduced a framework called the 3 R's. Replacement, finding alternatives to using animals. Reduction, using fewer animals if you absolutely have to. And refinement, minimizing the suffering as much as humanly possible. The ideas were officially recognized in 1992 and even made it into the US Animal Welfare Act, AWA, of 1966.
3R is a number and a letter. I mean, what are we aiming at? Why do we have the 3 R's? The 3 R's should be 1 R. And also the 3R concept and the European directive aims at 1 R, aims at replacement. It's written in the directive, animal experiments as a last resort, and so on and so on. But it's not obligatory enough. The 3R concept, and I'm not the only one thinking like this, so the 3R concept is really not ideal in order to reach the goal of final replacement, because it's like when you switch technologies. Why investing in refinement? This is always the discussion. Refinement, we are doing refinement, so we are contributing to animal welfare. Well, okay, but there is money giving to the 3 R's, right? You have a very small amount, of money for non-animal or for 3R. So it is not all going into NAMS, what we were talking about, or into replacement. A lot is going into refinement. So animals have a little bigger cages, or you can develop a camera. You can monitor the feeling of the mouse or how the animals feel by monitoring their faces and so on. I do not think that this is very, why? I mean, if we have in Europe the directive, so we have an animal welfare rule. Animals shouldn't suffer. Animals should be fine because that's what we have our directive for. So improving little things that in the end, the animal dies in an experiment. The animals are suffering. More, less, they are. You can refine as much as you want. They will still suffer. And we will still have bad science. This is the thing. We are financially, with 3R, with refinement, we are financially supporting bad research or research research, of which we know we have better. This is like a company. When they want to end a product and they want to have a new one, they would not invest more money in this old product. They would shift and they would let go. And this is the thing, people can't let go. The one thing is people are doing a lot on implementation of new methods, but you have to let go the animal experiments. And this is unfortunately two different things. So this is something that we as NGO are always also telling people, on the decision maker level, we need to let go. Fine with implementation of new methods, but animals need to go. The testing needs to be banned. So this is something that is quite difficult.
I kind of believe in replacement. Not reduction, not refinement, just replacement. And most of my points are backed up by the scientific evidences.
So that means the suffering doesn't even show up in official statistics. It's like they don't exist. Same goes for birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. These massive exclusions allow for widespread, terrible abuse with absolutely no legal consequences. What a world we live in, huh? I mean, in 2014, an audit even reported that animals weren't always getting basic human care, and their pain and distress just went ignored. It's truly heartbreaking. And it also means that the true toll of suffering is hugely higher and profoundly underreported. And I'm not even talking about the bred animals killed as surplus. Animal testing isn't just for some niche research. Oh no. It's widespread in so many industries: cosmetics, household products, pharmaceuticals, pesticides, and even food safety.
And long-range effects of pesticides, the relative safety or danger of different amounts of exposure. How much poison is stored up in the body and how much excreted. And the effects of pesticides on the vital organs. And the kind of animal most suited for study may differ with each specific compound. But most pesticides in wide use today fall into one of two general groups according to the reaction they produce. DDT, the most widely used of all economic poisons, is representative of one of these groups.
And you might think that the only animals used in labs are mice and guinea pigs, but the list is way longer. Dogs, cats, monkeys, rabbits, ferrets, pigs, horses, birds, fish, and even wild animals captured from their natural homes. Let me give you some concrete examples of how animals are used in experiments. Dogs have their organs damaged and removed to study human conditions. Infant monkeys are ripped from their mothers to observe stress effects. Mice are force-fed chemicals every single day for 2 years straight, just to test cancer risk. Cats have spinal cord injuries inflicted on them. Then they're made to run on treadmills to study nerve function. Pigs receive implants, like pacemakers, to evaluate how humans might react. Pregnant rabbits are given toxic pesticide doses to see how they affect both the mothers and their unborn babies. Sheep are put under water-like pressure to examine their physiological responses. Baboons receive injections to induce agonizing endometriosis symptoms. Horses are infected with viruses to study human disease. Should I keep going? Oh, and I forgot. In so many cases, no pain relief is provided. But why? Because it might interfere with the experiment's outcome. Once the experiment is over, once they've gotten all the data needed, the animals are simply killed and dissected. But where do these animals even come from? Some of them are bred right there in the labs. Others are captured in the wild, especially in parts of Africa, Asia, and South America. And like the Cruelty-free international organization says, sometimes in the name of conservation, wild animals are captured and brought into laboratories. I mean, seriously, what a good way to conserving and saving animals. Some cats and dogs come from animal shelters. I know it sounds impossible, but it is true. Yes, pets surrounded by families may end up in research labs through a process called bound seizures. So if I'm right, so instead of being euthanized, they're sent to suffer and die in experiments. How kind of us to save them from euthanasia, only to make them suffer and then kill them. More ethical, right? Others are just sourced from farms, racetracks, or dealers. It's a whole dark supply chain. Now, if you're thinking, yeah, but I'm sure they're well treated, please think again. The suffering they endure is huge, and it's constant. These experiments often lead to animals vomiting, bleeding, developing tumors, cancer, paralysis, and organ failure. And beyond the physical pain, just imagine the psychological torture. Many animals live in complete isolation, confined to tiny cages, barely able to move. Some even mutilate themselves out of stress and despair. If they're lucky, maybe they get a toy or some soft bedding. If not, they just die alone in extreme pain. Even if they survive the experiment, they are always killed afterward.
Most monkeys are imprisoned indoors like this, in cinder block rooms with artificial fluorescent lighting. Many are caged alone, desperate for contact with other monkeys. They endure profound loneliness and become psychotic, pacing and circling endlessly in their cages. They even pull out their own hair on their arms, legs, and torsos, a sign of extreme psychological distress. Others engage in self-injurious behavior called eye poke, in which they press their thumb into the corner of their eye socket. And they shake their cages out of frustration and rage at their endless imprisonment and complete powerlessness. Funding for these experiments must end now.
So if you consider all of that well treated, then yeah, I guess you're right.
Researchers need to be willing to change and not saying, okay, what's the easiest way to push my career, to get funding and get fame? Some attempts are very lobbyistic, very one-sided, and not driven by the sake of good science. And that is a problem. And also publications, a lot of journal editors, because the success of a researcher is reflected by his or her publications in journals, in scientific journals, and the editors very often request animal testing. Although you have a very good study, you are submitting a very excellent manuscript with animal-free methods. I experienced that myself. Colleagues experienced that. There are publications on that problem. Publications and funding are a driving force for what researchers are doing. This is all interconnected, and that needs to be tackled in the future.
I think it's mostly because of the cultural shift. I mean, think about a researcher who has been who has been studying animal models since 20 years or 30 years. Then young researchers came and joined his lab. It's more like a grandfathered technology, like they just transfer the same protocol from one generation to another generation, and they just don't want to use these methodologies or adopt these methodologies. But just because some people don't want to use it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I would say it's more about habit and culture. The science has showed that these methods are better and they are more human relevant.
Do you have a dog? Maybe, I don't know, a beagle. Imagine your dog, your beloved companion. Now imagine you're shoving him or her into a cold metal box. There's no escape. You strap a tight mask on his or her face, and then you pump cigarette smoke directly into his or her lungs. Not once, not twice, for hours every single day until his or her little body just gives up. Does that sound horrifying? It should. And obviously, I'm not being serious here. I would never do that, not to your dog, not to any dog, not to any living being, by the way. But they do. The cigarette industry does. For decades, companies have tortured animals in the name of research. They lock up monkeys, chain down beagles, force-feed rats poison disguised as tobacco smoke, and all just to study what we already know. Smoking kills. This isn't some dark fiction. It is not ancient history we can just forget. No, this is real, and it is happening right now. And all of that for profit, all to protect an industry that thrives on addiction, suffering, and a whole lot of silence. Cigarette testing is an incredible, powerful example of completely unnecessary cruelty. For decades, tobacco companies have been forcing animals, mostly rats and monkeys and dogs, to inhale smoke for hours, every day. Picture this: rats confined to canisters, inhaling smoke for 6 hours a day for 2 years. 2 years. Dogs and monkeys, they were forced to wear masks and had tubes surgically inserted into their throats. These tests didn't just cause extreme suffering, they also completely failed to predict how smoking affects human health, but also delayed recognizing the link between smoking and lung cancer. Seriously, if you think rat experiments apply to humans, you're wrong. Rats breathe only through their noses. They filter air way more efficiently, and they can't even inhale larger particles that we can. We're biologically worlds apart. What messes up a rat's lungs won't affect us the same way.
Mice are very different from humans in their biology. For example, their immune system doesn't react the same way. Their hearts beat much faster, and the way they process chemicals in the liver is completely different. If someone is force-feeding mice a chemical or a drug, it may look safer in a mice, but then again, it can cause serious side effects in people. Mice are not little humans, like they're not the miniature versions of humans. Humans are totally different.
And it gets even more graphic. Experimenters even smeared cigarette tar directly onto mice and rats' bare skin just to induce growth of skin tumors. It is disgusting. Despite having known alternatives, despite these massive biological differences, and despite the fact that we've known for ages that smoking causes lung cancer, cigarette testing still happens, while some countries have thankfully banned it. Others, like the US, don't technically require animal testing for tobacco products, yet they often prefer it. I'm speechless.
That's why it's so important to develop methods that are directly based on human biology. Tobacco and nicotine products have been tested on animals for decades, but the reality is that those tests haven't prevented the harm we see in people. I think that today the future of tobacco testing is moving toward human-based models. For example, we can study how tobacco smoke or the smoke that's coming out of e-cigarettes affect human lung cells grown in the lab, or we can use the lung-on-chip devices that can mimic that how our airways actually functions. And we can combine these with the computational models to understand that what are the long-term risks and in a human-relevant way. So I think the important point is, instead of forcing animals to inhale smoke, which tells us very little about human disease, we now have the ability to directly measure human-relevant effects. And that's where the field is heading.
Here's another example. Take Elon Musk Neuralink. Since 2017, they've conducted invasive experiments on monkeys, pigs, rats, and sheep, implanting electrodes into their brain, leading to severe risks and fatalities. In 2020, they even partnered with the University of California to remove portion of monkeys' calls for implants. But here's the critical point. Alternatives exist. Non-invasive brain-machine interfaces using EEGs can read brain signals without surgery, already improving lives for people with disabilities. We don't need to drill into an animal brain. Supporters argue animal tests lead to life-saving treatment, but animal tests frequently fail to predict human outcomes and treat sentient beings as disposable resources. While laws claim to protect animals, the sheer cruelty and inevitable killing tell a different story. The good news, more accurate alternatives are rapidly advancing. So, despite over 200 million animals being used yearly worldwide, why do so many people remain totally unaware? Why is animal testing kept so hidden? A massive part of it comes down to secrecy, clever marketing, and a whole lot of lobbying. These powerful lobbyists are playing a huge role. Just look at Europe. In October 2024, a bunch of documents came out revealing insane industry pressure against new animal welfare science. These industries also manipulate public opinion through pure propaganda. They put out these sanitized videos and stage footage portraying animal testing as humane and necessary. But what do they hide from us? The harsh, brutal reality that happens behind closed doors, the decapitations, the skull implants. That is the truth they don't want you to see.
Our biology is totally different, and if you will see the examples in the past, the aspirin has been toxic to dogs. So if these drugs would have been developed in the animal system, we would never be using those. So we know that the animals are poor predictors. And you know that 90% of the drugs are failed because they have been tested in animals. And that has been proven not just by like a certain group. If you see the current paradigm worldwide, everyone is thinking the same.
When I worked in Munich as a research group leader, I worked on mice. There were a lot of studies on mice, PhD students, technicians, not myself doing the experiment, not performing it, but I had a staff who was doing it. That was the experience that I made, that I saw that these results related, for example, to diabetes or other complex human diseases are not very well transferable from animals to humans, because a drug can work in a mouse, but it will not work in a human being because we are so different. And therefore, I realized that the animal model is not a good predictor for human disease and biology. The problem is that with the fundamental research, there is a lot of lobbyism by animal researchers. I understand that they are actually in a critical situation because this is killing their careers in the end. If their career at a university shift strategies and roadmaps and so on, because it's more regulatory. So yeah, that needs to be tackled, and that might take some longer. I feel, that's my impression, that the animal experimenters who are lobbyistic, they are not, of course, all the same, but the ones that are very lobbyistic, they are not, improving, let's say, their image a lot. And also by doing things like campaigning and very one-sided comments and also social media activity by professors. I don't know, I find this quite embarrassing. I find this very strange, but this is seen very critically within the other stakeholders, like also the political influence on European level. Also, I would say grew by us and the community that is promoting, let's say, animal-free research. And I feel that also decision makers are more critical towards animal researchers.
Take the US Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. Sounds like a great name, right? But could be wrong. Well, they often require feeding new pesticides to dogs for 90 days just to approve them for the market. What do we say again? Man's best friend? If I were a dog, I would quickly leave this toxic relationship. That's not science. That's just institutional cruelty. Scientists and policymakers have to stop treating animals as disposable tools. They are individuals. They are not instruments. Yes, regulations vary by countries. Some nations won't approve drugs without animal testing. But one of the real problems is how animals are viewed as disposable tools for human benefits instead of sentient individuals who deserve respect. Most animal experiments aren't even legally required. Seriously. But companies do them anyway, often to appease regulators, reduce liability, or honestly, just because it's always been done that way. Lobbyists are basically the puppet masters keeping animal testing alive. In Europe, agricultural and pharmaceutical industry lobbyists have literally jammed up animal welfare laws. Despite huge public pressure, the EU promised to ban cage farming. They even responded to those 1.4 million signatures from citizens. Yet, under the lobbyists and industrial pressure, laws were delayed. Even scientific agencies that try to give animal welfare-based opinions, industries-founded groups came in and challenged them. It's a constant uphill battle.
That is a limitation, and it is not to overcome, because we are talking about species differences. We need other models for the future, and everyone knows that. This is actually quite an established problem that is tackled also politically, because also the scientific community realizes that there needs to be a change.
Conferences like the FELASA, the Federation of European Laboratory Animal Science Associations conference in Marseille in 2022. It dresses up the practice with all the flowery PR language like animal welfare, but it's all just sanitized messaging and marketing. The real footage of suffering, the stuff they hide from you, like decapitations and school implants, that's the truth.
Until I came to Munich as a postdoc or as a PI, I never worked with animals before, but rather based on ethical reasons. I didn't want to harm animals, so I worked always with other models. And then at Munich, I needed to, as I said, supervise students or lab technicians. So I was involved in animal experiments for the first time. Already after 2-3 years, I thought, oh my God, this is really not reliable. I was a bit surprised myself, because I also had a bit this dogma in my head. I was thinking that, hey, animal experiments, that is something. The results that you obtain, you kill animals, so it should be for something, right? That was quite disappointing and quite shocking. And also how things are going on practically. People are working sometimes with animals and they do not have handling experience, and then things happen that are not supposed to happen. And it doesn't look like presented on a lot of university websites where you see oh, our work, we care about animals, and then you see little mice on a hand and being very happy. That's not very representative for animal testing.
Most of the tests that are used in the current regulatory toxicology scenarios are outdated, and they have been used from 50 to 80 years, but they are never validated to human relevance. They will tell you that how a rabbit is going to behave if you are going to put a chemical in their eyes, but they're not going to predict that what that chemical is going to cause in humans.
Thankfully, after all that, you might feel heartbroken and overwhelmed, but we have incredible alternatives to animal testing. There are 4 main ways we can do this research ethically and effectively. The in vitro testing. We're talking about an amazing innovation like organs, small organs on chips, sophisticated cell and tissue models, and tests using actual human cells to detect toxins.
We use human cells, we use patient-derived cells. So the first thing is organ-on-chips methods. Sometimes you even call them microphysiological systems. So these are the miniature organs that are grown from human cells into an organ that can actually mimic the human biology.
These mini organs, 3-dimensional tissue culture, kind of mini structure of a human organ in a dish. This can be patient-derived. That is a very important technology, which means you can grow a mini brain from a healthy person, but based on cells of a patient who has Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever. And then in the dish, you will have a natural disease model of this patient, because the physiological properties and also diseases are reflected in these organoid cultures. And that is the main advantage. So if you want to test Alzheimer, you test it on the patient. On the one hand, you have the human species, which is perfect. And what you also have is you can do patient-derived. This is another field that is very, I would say, relevant for the future, personalized medicine. So we are talking about the possibility. I think there are options opening up that that you can have completely different medical directions, like, for example, personalized medicine. So a drug of your brain organoid could work differently for your brain organoid than for mine. So that is gender specifics and so on, even age specific. That is a very good field. Roche, by the way, the pharma company, is doing a lot in this direction. You have also these organoid models. You can put all these organoids on a chip, which is called organ on a chip, and then you can test drugs and the interaction of organs, because you have a microfluidic system mimicking the blood circulation, and then you have like different organs connected. So you have like a kind of human body on a chip concept based on these organoids. Also from disease patients.
We also have the in silico modeling. It's basically advanced computer simulation that can predict biological responses. No animals are needed, just powerful algorithms.
There are a lot of exposure-based methods. For example, we are seeing an effect in the laboratory, but how do we translate that to humans? So we do a lot of computer simulations that in scientific term are called physiologically based pharmacokinetic modeling, PBPK models. So we used these simulations to see that what are the effects in humans, what should be the effect in human that we are seeing in the lab. That is another method that is very widely accepted. In addition to that, we have a lot of artificial intelligence based methods like deep neural networks and machine learning based methods that help us to predict the risk of any chemical or to predict the toxicity of a drug molecule in humans.
Also, what you have is a lot of in silico models, which are very relevant in particular when it comes to regulatory testing, because they are used a lot, for example, to assess the toxicity of chemicals or predict. So these in silico tools, computational tools, AI is very relevant.
Research with human volunteers. Yes, methods like microdosing and advanced brain imaging allow us to study things safely and directly in humans. We also have human patient simulators. They are incredible, lifelike, computerized models that mimic human physiology, providing invaluable training and research data without harming anyone. These approaches aren't just more ethical and humane, they're often more accurate too, giving us better, more human-relevant data for research and product safety.
The combination of all these approaches will be the future. So the future will be not one animal experiment is replaced by one in vitro model, but we will have batteries of in vitro models all together giving an excellent predictivity, much better than the animal models. So it's like a puzzle. You can use different methods if you like, and if you need, there are so many different approaches.
You know, people have been protesting against animal cruelty since forever. And as long as animals continue to be used as mere resources, there will always be those who stand up for them. Over the years, countless groups have risen up to defend animals' rights. Students all over the globe are calling for an end to the use of animals in education and research. They see it for what it is, totally outdated, especially with all these amazing alternatives ready and available. And I forgot, less expensive.
I mean, like, we are living in an era where we have all the available tools that can replace animal testing, and we know that animals are often poor predictors of human health outcomes. So we need to adapt, right? We have been evolved, and I think that should be the driving force to adopt human relevant methodologies, which are better predictor of human health outcome, and adopting these would protect public health more efficiently. Animal test costs billions and billions of dollars, and non-animal methods are time and cost efficient and more ethical. All the drugs that have been gone animal testing, they cost billions and billions of dollars because of the huge time that it takes. It takes almost 3 to 5 years to do tests on animals.
It is cheaper because it's better science and because it's like all these technological pros, because animal testing is expensive, or the facilities or the staff and so on. In order, not ethically driven, of course, the ethics are relevant, but scientifically driven for the sake of a better medicine and also better technologies, saving costs. Pharma industry, for example, could save a lot of costs
But what kind of experiments are actually happening in our universities? One truly disturbing example, which you might find out on many university campuses, is the forced swim test. It's actually what it sounds like. Small animals, typically rats, are placed in inescapable breakers of water. These poor animals swim frantically, absolutely terrified they're going to drown, supposedly in the name of understanding human mental health, like depression. And if you think that's cruel, it doesn't end up there. After this horrific ordeal, the animals are often killed through gassing, blunt force trauma to the head, overdose of anesthetics, or even by breaking the necks just to study the brain. It's shocking, but many of the world's top universities are still doing this practice. But there is hope. In the UK, for example, students are pushing hard for change. A 2024 Savanta poll in the UK showed 82% of students believe universities should redirect funds from animal experiments. This opposition has led most UK universities to stop cruel practices like the forced swim test, where rats are placed in inescapable water until they give up. And it is not just students. Many doctors are also standing against animal testing.
There is lack of financial aid or support. There is a lot of biasness towards animal methods, and that's why we are there.
In Germany, there is an organization called Doctors Against Animal Experiments, founded in 1979. Their motto is so clear: medical progress is important. Animal experiments are the wrong way. They're all about using modern tools like human cells cultures, organ chips, and focusing on prevention-based research. They truly believe, as do I, that we can achieve real progress without harming animals. Of course, developing and getting this alternative approved isn't easy. One major hurdle is funding.
A professor, for example, worked with the animal models on Alzheimer's for 30 years. All his funding, all his publication, everywhere, everything based on these models and the theories based on these models. But shifting now to a completely other model will actually ruin his career, because that is not so easy to get funding. This is a very complex problem, and this might take longer because you need to tackle also the funding agencies or funders, the people actually who are funding the research. That need to be changed, because a lot funding is assigned to animal testing. You have more than 99% in Germany, or more than 90% of funding for animal testing, and like maybe 1% for animal-free testing. And that is not good. And you need more funding. That is also what the US and everyone is doing, reducing funding for animal testing, increasing for animal-free.
So, but again, I think that the regulatory agencies are hesitant, but there is a huge shift toward accepting and adopting non-animal method. And that has been proven by the recent announcement by FDA and NIH. FDA in April 2025 announced that it's going to move away from animal testing, and the NIH followed the suit, and they also announced in July that they are moving away from animal testing. So there is a huge shift. Very recently, NIH announced that they're going to open a standardized organoid modeling center where they will perform research on these cutting-edge human-relevant based methods like organ-on-chip. They will also implement artificial intelligence-based technologies to utilize their translatability and to improve their performance. So that's a really great news, and that proves that the shift is toward accepting non-animal methods. All the regulatory agencies like FDA, EPA, NIH are proposing how we can replace animal testing. So I would say that the paradigm has been shifted. We won't until every animal is free from cage.
Alternatives must go through strict validation process before being accepted by governments. But guess what? Animal tests are often not held to the same rigorous standards. This double standard isn't fair, and it really slows down the progress.
That is political. That is what the agencies ask. That is the fixed political regulatory system. if you want to test drugs for marketing or chemicals or whatever, you need to test on an animal. That's obligatory for the companies. Therefore, that is my view, at least, and based on my experience. Often the pharma companies are blamed that they are doing animal experiments and so on, but they are not the main problem. The main problem is the rules they need to stick to, because they need to market drugs and they need to test. And if they have to do animal testing, they are doing it. That is now changing, I would say. We are observing currently a very massive shift towards regulatory testing, in particular regulatory testing without animals. For example, in Europe, there is a roadmap on the way developed by the European Commission, and it involves all the agencies that are responsible for testing chemicals, drugs, and so on. And the aim is to develop now this roadmap, which will be soon published, towards animal-free safety testing. If we will have the change driven by politics in the end, driven by the government, if we have this change in the regulatory system, this is only 30% of all animal experiments. I think even less. But still, that may be a driving force. Because if the pharma companies don't need animal testing and they will use the in vitro methods, then they need experts, right? For these, they need people and experts, and that is something that universities need to provide. They need to provide people and teach PhD students the right technologies that are important later on for the future and for their jobs. That is something very positive. We have also dramatic developments in the US by the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. They are having something called the Modernization Act 3.0, which is very much going towards animal-free testing of drugs, and also many positive changes at the NIH, National Institutes of Health, which are more the fundamental research part. In the EU, the fundamental research sector, called a European Research Area Action, also goes towards. We have, for both very important areas where we need change, we have political actions and institutional actions.
Still, so many scientists remain committed to advancing non-animal methods. They know it's the only way forward.
We work within US, we work with a lot of other countries like Canada, a lot of European countries like Netherlands, Greece, France. There are a lot more. The number of projects that we were working is increasing, and I love it. It's so nice to see the presence of these methods, to see that these methods are taking central stage. I started my PhD in 2011, and that time you will walk into a conference and you will just see that very few posters are being presented on these methods. But now you walk into any big conference, you see that there are so many specialty sections that are actually dedicated for the non-animal method. So it's really great to see that change. I see the future of research as human-centered. For decades, we have relied on animal experiments, but they have failed to predict human outcomes far too often.
I'm quite positive that we will be at another point in 10 years when we speak. I think the US will be the first who will be the innovators. I mean, we are talking about innovation. So if you are politically actually intelligent, you should say, wow, we should invest there. You have a complete new economic sector that is opening up in innovation. So this is what the US is realizing. And when I see what they are doing and how they are working together, regulators, basic research, they are all like really interconnecting it. So I think they will make it quite fast. Europe will be maybe a bit slower. I mean, this is to be expected. This is what will happen. We will see when the last animal will be used. I would say that it can be quite soon in the regulatory sector, but the fundamental research sector might take some time longer to adapt. There is a very positive drive. You feel that all stakeholders are actually working towards the same goal. We always have a compromise in the end, and not everyone is happy. That's how it is. But still, we are working towards this aim.
In our capitalist world, your real power is as a consumer. Stop buying products that harm animals, and companies will change. They care about profits. If consumers demand cruelty-free, they will deliver cruelty-free. Many cosmetic brands like The Body Shop are now 100% vegan and cruelty-free. Countless small brands offer ethical alternatives. You can also raise your voice to influence politics. It goes hand in hand with changing how we consume and shaping our political view about the world. So, how can you spot truly cruelty-free products? Here's what to look for. Prioritize products with both vegan and cruelty-free certifications. If you can't find both, look at least for a solid cruelty-free label. Here's a non-exhaustive list of vegan and cruelty-free certifications. The Vegan Society, PETA Vegan and Cruelty-free, Vegan Oak, Certified Vegan, Vegan.org, and here's a non-exhaustive list of cruelty-free certifications. PETA Cruelty-free, PETA Approved, Leaping Bunny, this one's considered the gold standard, and One Voice. And remember, not every amazing ethical and transparent brand is certified yet. Some might be in the process. To double check any brand, seriously use this website. It is a complete lifesaver. If you even want or can go further, your power extends beyond shopping. Your investments matter. Choose companies that don't support animal exploitation or destroy habitats. For example, some companies contribute massively to deforestation, destroying wildlife habitat. In the process, your financial voices influence the market and the future of animals. We don't need some superhero to change the world. Each of us can make a difference. Animals' lives are in our hands. Thank you so much for watching.
My message to people watching is this: every one of us has a role in shaping the future of science. When people choose cruelty-free products, when we choose vegan diet, when people ask questions about where cosmetics or medicines come from, and where people share information about alternatives, each one of us are helping speed up the shift away from animal testing.